Welcome back. It is now 19 minutes past the hour. It is time to take another quick look at the stories that are leading this bulletin. South Sudan's warring parties have clinched a deal that will hopefully bring about an end to the current violence in the city. President Ramaphosa shares the AUC5 hope of a breakthrough in South Sudan's brutal civil war. And new COSATU leadership in the Western Cape plans to protest against what it calls a total assault on workers. Starting in continental news now, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has again emphasized the need to rebuild his country's economy. He was speaking at his second campaign rally after the Bulawayo bomb blast last month.
Back on the campaign trail, the venue for the rally, Harare region, security was tight after the Bulawayo bomb incident, and security cameras posted all around the stadium.
We have stability, we have peace, people are united, people accept visitors. So with that type of environment, capital will come. Capital comes where it is not frightened.
Zimbabwe is struggling to rebuild the economy. All the parties contesting elections in Zimbabwe have promised to address this challenge.
With or without sanctions, we can still develop our country. And we are actually demonstrating that we have the capacity, capability, and ability to reconstruct our country, to reconstruct our economy. And we are doing it stone upon stone, brick upon brick. This is what we are doing. But it shows now that the economy is hitting, the economy is expanding, because despite the fact that after introduction of SI 64, we reduced my imports aid by 2 billion. But still, after reducing my imports by 2 billion, my imports are still outstripping my exports. Although my exports had increased by 24%.
Some international observers have already arrived in Zimbabwe. On Thursday, women candidates raised concerns around the participation of women. The elections will take place at the end of the month. Sophie Mukwena, SABC News.
Well, the chief of the European Union election observer mission to Zimbabwe has now described the July 30th poll as a very critical test of Zimbabwe's reform process. The mission has already deployed 10 analysts and 44 long-term observers across Zimbabwe. And Elmar Brok concluded his very first visit to Harare after meeting with President Emmerson Mnangagwa, the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission chairperson, political parties, including some candidates and even civil society members. He underscored the very need for transparency and inclusivity in the entire elections process. And joining us now in studio to unpack some insight into the state of readiness for the Zimbabwean election is President of the World Native Identity Foundation, Dr. Charles Sinkala. Doctor, what a pleasure. Good afternoon. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday to you too, Alicia.
Doctor,
pleasure meeting you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Look, Doctor, I'm sure a lot of people are asking, what is this group, what do we call it, the World Native Identity Foundation? What is it all about, Doctor?
Yes, basically, World Native Identity Foundation was formed on the basis of realizing the African dream, the indigenous dream, why Africa decided to regain her independence, to identify herself and her pride and the minerals and the resources which is in Africa. And we basically concentrate on continental conflict resolution and democracy. Remember, democracy was franchised to us by the Europeans, and they never gave us a book how to do it. So that's how we are failing to govern ourselves. You know, on the basis of the 32 heads of state who were governed in Addis Ababa in 1963. In May, they decided that Africa must gain our independence because of the colonial masters and the apartheid here in South Africa, where Africans were colonized. You know, not only the African continent, but also the mentality of our African people. They were colonized.
So you operate across the continent?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm actually also, besides being a president of World Native Identity, I'm an international political expert. I engage with governments and help them to assist how to
and
govern.
Doctor, we need such bodies, because we've heard how the AU sometimes cannot reach everybody that actually needs it. But let's get into our discussion this afternoon. I mean, we can carry on with that all the time. I mean, how ready is Zimbabwe to stage free and fair elections? We've literally watched the country descend into economic chaos. And what's new this time around? Besides, of course, that Mugabe is not on the ballot.
Yes, yeah, that's a difference. But unfortunately, you know, we've got a lot of things to be done in Zimbabwe. One of the other item is to decolonize the Zimbabweans, for them to realize that the basis of governing ourselves was based on to educate ourselves, to feed ourselves, to treat ourselves when we are sick, and to govern ourselves. These are the basic things which ZANU-PF, they fought the independence from Ian Smith. You know, the first 10 years of governance in Zimbabwe, Mugabe did very well until he lost it, and he started being manipulated by other forces. But coming to the regime change which has come to Zimbabwe, they realized, and it's the only country in Africa who has a resort to resolve their own problem. You know, they have set an idea and an agenda. Though we do not go to the last resort of a coup, but if need be, you know, that's how a country is supposed to, you know, to take the center stage. So what is happening now in Zimbabwe is RG Mugabe has been dispossessed of his power, which is very good, but the system is still there, you know, the culture is still there. And I'm quite very shocked that you know, the differences of ideas by the people of Zimbabwe, it's so vast and diversity, because at the moment we are looking at more than 112 political parties. So how well or how different can we be as Africans to resolve the problems of Zimbabwe by having 112 political parties? So the unity, the hygiene, the political hygiene which I talk about has been lost.
Let's talk about that political hygiene, Doctor. I mean, we've seen the current volatile situation. I mean, 2 people lost their lives in a presidential electoral campaign just about, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. We hear about the continued attempts on prominent political leaders' lives. So it doesn't sound like everything has been rooted out before people can go to the polls.
Yes, you know, those has to be ironed out. Unfortunately, in my view, I can submit to the people of Africa that I think ZANU-PF, they have had their share in trying to resolve the Zimbabwean politics. The political transformation, I pray that it descends upon Zimbabwe so that they can have, they give a chance to another new generation. You know, President Mnangagwa has been in the forefront of trying to govern Zimbabwe for many years. I mean, Mugabe used him into a lot of things which has been accused. That's why his life has been at stake. I mean, this is not the first attempt they have attempted to take his life. You know, President Mnangagwa is the one who was in the forefront of the massacres. 300,000 people died. You know, so now these agitators of transformation, not only changing from Mugabe, they don't want to replace it another tyrant. You know, so these are some of the things which needs to be ironed out. But again, the same Zimbabweans must sit down and look at the ideology, why we Africans we independent, and look at the national interest and resolve towards that rather than concentrating on personal attacks.
You know, Doctor, it seems like the ZANU-PF is always coming up when you think about Zimbabwean politics, and it brings me to this next question. Do you have a sound enough political competition in Zimbabwe to ensure that the different views of the society in Zimbabwe are represented, if you're only finding the MDC and of course the ZANU-PF, which is basically the ANC of the Zimbabwean nation?
Of course, unfortunately, there is no that ideology. What Zimbabweans now they are trying to achieve is what has been deprived from them for many years.
Freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice,
Yeah.
which they never had. A lot of Zimbabweans crossed over South Africa and many other parts of the continent. Some they went even to Europe. They never had a chance to vote.
Most of them are here as well.
Exactly. My neighbor is a Zimbabwean, so they are all over the place. So now it's an opportunity for them to have the regime change. But again, they are forgetting the ideology of how governance is supposed to be. They are focusing only to change the regime. Most of them, whom I have personally talked to, they are talking of eradicating ZANU-PF to take out. But now, if they take the ZANU-PF out, what is the structure? What is the infrastructure they are giving there?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things which we can't hear from the leaders who are pioneering this type of transformation.
Yes, Doctor. I mean,
and change.
political education, do the Zimbabweans, the voters themselves, these are the people that actually go and choose the leaders. Do they even know what and who and why they're voting come the 30th of July?
No, unfortunately they don't. I'll give an example of myself in 2001 when I aspired for parliamentary elections in Zambia, the country where I was born. The leader of the political party never told us why we have to stand as members of parliament. I did not know until after 15 or 20 years.
You're just going there as numbers,
They
basically.
told you must win the elections, you must be in parliament.
Why?
They want the political party to win. But they're supposed to tell that the member of parliament, your ideology and the system or the mandate, you have to look after your people in your constituents and help the government to make policies and change where necessary. Education, infrastructure, road, and all those type of things which are not. So we are lacking education. But again, we have to preach of decolonization of the mindset of the people.
Yeah.
That is very important. What we are colonized or hypnotized by the colonial masters, it was lethal. All the people, they are colonized into that area, and we can't even see any good or bad. That's why we are fighting ourselves. You know, so we must unlearn what we are taught. Relearn, unthink, and rethink again of what we are taught.
Doctor.
Then we have a good place of mind, then we start working together.
You know, Doctor, you spoke about a regime change earlier on, and I want to know, how is this going to come about when Zimbabweans are scattered all over the diaspora and they cannot even vote? Is this something that your group is, of course, legislating for? I was speaking to the Zimbabwean Electoral Commissioner, I think last week, and he reassured me that it's just a matter of legislation that needs to be passed before the Zimbabweans in the diaspora can actually vote.
But even if the Electoral Commission can decide, the system of governance is based on the one-party state, which was taken from Ian Smith. They never changed the constitution. They still that power into it. So there's a lot of things which they have to do before they even look at political reforms. You know, so those are some of the things which they have to say, no, let's give an opportunity for each and every person to participate and to choose a government which will represent the pride of the Zimbabweans. And not only the Zimbabweans, we must remember each and every country in Africa represent the rest of Africa. If Zimbabwe is not at peace, South Africa won't be at peace,
true,
Angola won't be at peace, because they'll be running over. You know, we've heard what has been happening in South Africa from 1995 of xenophobic attacks.
South Sudan,
you know, South Sudan, now we've got issues where the country has been cut in half. Lesotho, Swaziland, also we have problems there. Central African Republic, we've got problem. Democratic Republic of Congo, the richest country in Africa, 3.2 trillion United States dollars of minerals under her belly. They can't even hold elections. The president there can't afford to hold elections because, I mean, he's overstayed this term. He's 18 months beyond this term. And if we look at the international community, they can't do anything. The AU can't do anything. The SADC can't do anything. Africa is in two pieces because we are not working towards one direction where East and West and Central and North Africa
working towards
work
the same
together
goal.
to the same goal.
You know, Doctor, we have to leave it there. I was going to ask you, this is going to be a true test then of Zimbabwe's reform process during these elections.
Yes, it's a true test, and I think we've started now the removing of Mugabe and these clones and tyrants. we'll start the beginning of political hygiene into that Zimbabwe, because everybody will be participating. So I think we're going to exactly the Zim dollars. I mean, it's the only country without a currency, unfortunately. But at least we have a sense of moving forward, even if the pace is very slow. At least the change is coming for the Zimbabweans, and they can smile as much as we are smiling yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. That is Dr. Charles Sinkala, the president of the World Native Identity Foundation, talking to us about the Zimbabwean elections that take place come the 30th of this month.